per day, which is rather hard to imagine. In reality, this headline number includes any inquiry that never actualized for any number of reasons, including event cancellation, difficulty of access, Baird center insufficiency itself, or simply losing interest and no longer responding. Those headline reported rooms lost, you must read the report detail to see that 18%, just 74,000 rooms per year, are attributed to insufficient hotel supply. Now, even if every one of those 74,000 rooms lost was successfully converted to business in a new 650-room convention hotel, it would be operating at only 31% occupancy. We'd actually have to double that and find another 74,000 rooms to get to our current and healthy 62% hotel market occupancy. By our estimation, that translates into approximately 50 entirely new events per year at the Baird Center just to support this one proposed hotel at a still unhealthy level. The market as a whole to reach a more historically healthy 70% occupancy, new hotel would need to be the catalyst to bring more than 320,000 new room nights to the city every year. Our next concern around accuracy is that the report utilizes an unrealistic competitive set. Austin, Charlotte, Nashville, and Indianapolis are simply in a league of their own when measured by current occupancy and average daily rates. To put some numbers to this, the current average RevPAR in the CBD for these four cities is $160, 52% higher than Milwaukee's $105. This is not surprising, given their combination of location, airlift, infrastructure, downtown stadiums, number of large-scale events, amount of city investment, and warmer climate, etc. We simply do not have comparable demand drivers that are supporting a hotel room supply in these cities, and the inclusion of these cities in the peer group data is misleading and distorts the analysis and conclusions of the report. Their inclusion also distorts the appearance of how we compete as a city, which in reality is primarily in the Midwest and frequently the upper Midwest. On another slide, the report goes so far as to cite global demand growth, literally for the entire world, to help build a case for growing meeting industry demand that would be relevant to Milwaukee. It is not relevant. If we take a comprehensive US view of meeting demand, we do see significant risk that that will be outpaced by the growth of major city convention facilities that have increased rapidly over the last 5 years. There are at least 8 other major cities that have recently expanded their convention centers, with another 5 either building from the ground up, such as in Austin, or expanding, such as in Dallas, Los Angeles, Fort Worth, or Salt Lake City. We see this ourselves when we're visiting other markets. And while we are optimistic about the success of the Baird Center, we can't deny that citywide convention business is becoming an increasingly competitive market, and we should pick our spots where Milwaukee can win. Finally, I would like to comment by rejecting the characterization of Milwaukee's full-service hotels as quoted in the report, relatively old. Trade, the Kimpton, Westin, and Marriott are actually all relatively recent additions to this market, and the Hilton and Pfister have both undergone extensive multi-million-dollar renovations. Come to the Hilton Milwaukee, and we will happily show you what we mean. That hotel now ranks in the top 20% of all Hilton properties nationwide.
One of the central goals of the Baird Center expansion is to allow for simultaneous or overlapping events to fill midweek gaps in hotel occupancy. We seem to have lost sight of this. This is the vision of hotels like ours supported with our room tax dollars. Hotels west of the river, midweek occupancy averages 55%, continues to be a major challenge. One of the key benefits of doubling the size of Baird Center is to allow back-to-back events with one event able to load in, set up, and occur while another event is tearing down and loading out. This capability was to address a core, long-standing need to grow midweek demand and fill historical gaps between events, while utilizing current room supply and improving the health of CBD hotels and restaurants. It was this frequently stated objective It resulted in Marcus and others becoming active supporters of the Baird Center expansion. While we appreciate the efforts of Visit Milwaukee and progress has been made, this has not yet been achieved, as evidenced by our persistently low occupancy rates. Introducing more hotel rooms into the supply without supporting demand further erode our ability to achieve that objective. Last, the addition of a new large-scale taxpayer subsidized hotel seems to be guided by an ambition of growth at any cost. Left unchecked, this ambition will likely create long-term harm to hotels serving the visitor economy that we all want to succeed. This is not a case of if you build it, they will come. Instead, if you build it, will dilute the market with oversupply, put taxpayer subsidies used to finance the proposed hotel at risk, likely see a failure of other hotels in addition to those that are already failing. The report is largely silent on both cost, permitting, and financing hurdles, of which there are many. We estimate that a project of this size would likely cost between $350 to $400 million. There is likely no viable private financing that would support a project of this magnitude, given the overall market dynamic. It just isn't fundable. This is evidenced by the fact that there hasn't been a convention headquarters hotel built without a subsidy or public financing support in the United States in over 20 years. So the only likely scenario, the city would need to rely on taxpayers to get this built. That means our businesses would be imposing on our customers a tax to finance our competition. All this in the context of a currently unhealthy hotel. Indianapolis is a good example of what this would likely look like. In a market with a large supply of hotel rooms, a new 800-room Signia by Hilton Convention Center hotel is going to open later this year. The project was initially proposed as a privately financed project in 2018, but ultimately was unable to secure private financing under economically viable terms. So the city of Indianapolis took over the project in 2023, purchased the land from the developer, took over construction of the hotel projected at $500 million, financed entirely with municipal and TIF bonds. Last year, significant construction cost overruns forced Marion County to contribute an additional $70 million from its reserve funds to cover a 14% cost increase. In other words, to get the 800-room hotel built, it required the city of Indianapolis to get into the business of owning a hotel that cost $571 million or $700,000 per key, financed entirely by debt. Milwaukee would be attempting the same without consistent, recurring, and large event demand drivers, including events like the Big Ten championships and multiple sports, the Final Four, Olympic trials, the NFL Combine, the occasional Super Bowl, and more. As Indianapolis prepares to open it, they are doing so in an environment of declining hotel occupancy in their city, which industry analysts are attributing to oversupply. The proposed new hotel in Milwaukee also includes significant event and meeting spaces. Yet we are already feeling the impact of publicly subsidized competition on our event and banquet business with the Baird Center expansion. We alone can pinpoint 10 annual events lost to the Baird Center, otherwise been held historically in our hotels. Now the WCD is considering competing with publicly subsidized hotel rooms, and to date seems unbothered by the cost of broader market. We believe in this market. We have poured more than $160 million of our own capital into projects in Wisconsin over the past several years, including approximately $65 million between our renovations at Hilton Milwaukee and the Pfister. That said, it is worth pointing out that despite our best efforts, we could not reach a business case with sufficient investment returns to support the renovation of all 729 rooms in Milwaukee. We instead fully renovated 550 rooms of the original historic tower, as well as all of the meeting space and ballrooms, to support the new Baird Center with a convention hotel with first-class room product. turn the remaining 175 rooms into an independent limited service hotel known as the Baird. We simply must have an honest conversation about the current state of the CBD hotel market. Milwaukee's hotel market is not healthy. There are already more than 400 rooms in the pipeline projected to come on in the next few years, adding supply to the market. Marcus Corporation has called Milwaukee our hometown for 70 years. We are major investors, a large employer, long-standing philanthropic supporters, active community citizens. We're also a sophisticated owner and operator of successful hotels and resorts around the country, with uniquely deep insights into the market dynamics, particularly here in Milwaukee. It is objectively true. Milwaukee hotel market dynamics do not support this scale of private investment for a new convention hotel, which is why the discussion has already turned to public subsidies for this project. Sometimes the best deals are the ones that you don't. In the foreseeable future, we are hard pressed to see sufficient market demand to support a hotel of this size and magnitude, regardless of how it is financed. As we said at the onset, we do not believe the report provides enough credible and accurate information to reach the conclusion that it does. Our hope is that all involved instead focus their time and effort on how to improve the health of our existing market, fill the gaps in midweek demand, as was the original objective of the Baird Center expansion. We believe any plans moving forward need to be responsive to the conditions and realities of Milwaukee's hotel market, supported by realistic expectations for future demand. Adam, at the end of the day, the irony is that the hotels will be hurt the most if this moves forward are the ones who support and fund WCD and the Baird Center through room taxes, which seems self-defeating. We have been investing in this market, yet we face significant risk if tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies are used to compete against private investment to bring in more hotel rooms that Milwaukee cannot support with demand. Instead, we believe the better path is to let the Baird Center expansion do what was intended and make our current hotel market healthy. Thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to take your questions.
Those comments part of the record?
They weren't provided in advance, no. But if you like,
Yeah,
You have the report.
yeah,
that's even better.
that, yeah, I mean, that is more.
We'd be happy to. Thanks.
Mr. Flaherty, did you wanna add anything to that?
I agree.
Okay, great. Great. Do any of the committee members have Mr. Mayor McBride?
Questions are. We have hotels out in Wauwatosa too, which is why I'm on this board. But, on the East Coast, I didn't say I was from Wauwatosa. I said I was from Milwaukee. Hope that people would even know where that was. So, this is my hometown too, and I want to see it thrive. And I said the other day that one of the things that's driven me crazy over the years, we'd like to tear down things and build parking lots. I want to see that happen. But the other thing that has caused me concern over the years is this chicken and egg thing that we go through all the time. We say we don't have enough demand, and then we don't seem to find ways to create demand. You're saying that too, that your central purpose, you thought the purpose of expansion was to fill the midweek problem of, and we've seen that in Wauwatosa. In fact, one of our hotels, the leading hotels, is being converted into apartments because we have declines in business travel midweek. We do well on the weekends. We don't do well midweek. So it's that chicken and egg issue that we're struggling with. We heard the Hunden report. We heard Visit Milwaukee talk about, well, you said it the other way. If you build it, they will come. You said if we build it, won't come and we'll have a. I'm trying to clear that, trying to figure out. You know, we've had this discussion now my entire adult. And, you know, torn out a couple of hotels, we built a whole bunch of hotels. We don't have a lot of helpings in this market. Don't have big hotels. And one of the problems that Visible identified was we have all these little hotels. And convention organizers have to enter into contracts with 5 or 6 or 7 hotels rather than 1 or 2. And that's a problem too. So how does a person like me who's not in the business but has followed this for my entire adult life figure out whether someone is accurate when we reach the conclusion, which the report did, and I believe this in Milwaukee did, put on this in Milwaukee. Conclusion that we're losing conventions because we don't have enough high quality rooms. We've got a lot of hotel rooms. Their conclusion, as I understand it, we need more Hiltons. We don't need a lot of the lesser ones. We need more convention center hotels that can offer 600 plus rooms so that they don't have to go to 10 different hotels. Help me with that if you would. It's for me the big question. It's the chicken and egg question.
That's a fair point. I mean, Anna likes to have delegates close to their event. But we believe to build this whole vision purely around that one particular, sometimes not entirely met need of the event planning audience is to completely lose the plot as to why we expanded the convention center.
So the question then becomes, what would you do then to help us create that midweek demand that you say this addition was intended for? So I hear that, and we all want midweek demand. And as a Milwaukeean with no investment in the hotels, I want my hotel to fill up all the time. So how do we create that midweek demand?
I know these guys have plenty of things. I just want to say one more thing. In all the build-up to the expansion of the convention center, there's no mention of a new home. There's a lot of mention of the need for greater flexibility, to allow more events in, overlapping and back-to-back. And the center is on the record saying that will generate another 100,000 additional visitors to the city. We are nowhere near yet knowing whether that potential is. Yet, immediately we're open with the expansion with a hotel market that's fully understood before the expansion took place. Wisconsin Center District is immediately turning around and said, oh, market that was there before expansion is no longer good enough for us. We're going to build a 650 room hotel, effectively marginalize 650 of the room nights that already existed in the market that are in desperate need of help. We just think it's way too premature. What else can be done for the city? I've got a couple of thoughts, but I'll let these guys jump in.
Yeah, before so that, I just want to say, my office was across the street in the blue building. I watched the first part get built, and then I'd seen the second part get built. And I remember all the arguments about why, first of all, we had a hideous center before that looked like a warehouse. But then we built a nice convention center. But from the beginning in 1998, I think it was said, well, we're going to build across the street. We're going to build out to Kilbourne too, because we need to make sure that we can compete nationwide with enough convention center space to attract that kind of business. And the knock always was we don't have enough meeting space to attract that. So now we've built that meeting space. And you're saying we still don't have the demand, or how are we going to get there? So anyway.
Before you go, can
Yeah,
I just say one thing? Unless you put it on. They've been
Well aware of the weather. Our
They've been
snowplows
doing-
are getting ready.
They've been doing this, you know, the history of the Hilton was built in 1927. Walter Schrader built a building at the convention center across the street. All the, some Great Lakes. Naval up here, there was gambling, it was kind of open. That hotel had 5 floors.
By the way, I'm old enough to remember the Schrader.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I grew up, I lived.
Why don't you go?
Man, okay. And he walked through the hotel with Joe Zober after he bought it. And he said, "Do you realize there's 5 floors that have never been?" Joe didn't realize that. He said, "Well, it's too late now." And that just goes to the point. When the hotel was built in 1927, they couldn't. And you guys have been fighting that good fight forever. And midweek business is not going to happen. Never going to happen. In the summer.
Just would like to comment on that, right, if I might. I could add something to this, especially that's isn't addressed in the study, which is that this isn't about the chicken before the egg. This is about the farm for the chicken. What I mean by that is that our greatest asset as a city is our closest in proximity to the city of Chicago. I'm a vampire that sucks 31% of our buyers from below the state line because they have 9.9 million people. We don't survive as a city unless we're able to project consumers coming from outside the city to be able to utilize the things we have in the city. So what I mean by that in relation to this is that our airport, in comparison to every other airport that's mentioned in this study, every other airport that's mentioned in this study had record numbers of travel last year. Our airport was down by 7% last year. Our airport has 35 direct flights. Anybody here like taking that flight from Chicago to Mitchell that takes 13 minutes and everybody's complaining on the ride there? My point is that you can build the biggest hotel you want to, but essentially you can't get people here to actually utilize that hotel unless you have an airport that'll do it. So you have to embrace the philosophy that O'Hare, like it or not, is our airport, because we need to focus on building transportation that has more access, delivering people from Chicago to Milwaukee. That's your answer. I don't know why the concert guy has to figure it out for you after the Hunden guys didn't. But I've been here I've been here as long as Bob has been in Alderman. I look older than you today, but that's all.
100 years?
100 years, yeah. But
Let's
I,
be nice
this
to
is
each other.
this is my
We're there
I
for
was
the,
being nice.
we're there for the groundbreaking.
yeah. So my point is that while we're doing a tremendous Giannis head fake on talking about building a hotel, we're ignoring the reality that we have an airport that was stolen by UFOs in Cedar Rapids in 1978 has never changed since then. And no one wants to fly into Milwaukee not no one, but a high percentage of conventions that come here don't want to come to Milwaukee because they don't want to take a connecting flight, which is one of the reasons why the Visit team and Marty and their team attract a high percentage of conferences that are girls playing volleyball or boys playing sports who all get in their cars and drive 4 to 6 hours. If you ask Visit, their idea is to try to impact people that are 4 to 6 hours because you have a more difficult time flying here. You don't build a big hotel, but I'll probably be retired then and I'll probably be gone, but you're going to make the entire city suffer, and we have bigger problems than that.
If I could address part of the conversation. I do think these things are related.
Want me to repeat all that? I just recorded it.
There's no microphones anymore.
I was hearing.
Yeah, the table tap microphones are.
Of course.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I can talk a little louder.
Got it up as loud as. So speak up, I guess.
I wasn't
Okay.
okay. No one's ever said that.
I didn't tell you to be louder, Gary.
The point I was about to make is we operate a very capital intensive business. Can you hear me now? We operate very capital intensive. These hotels require renovation. They're from the short as 5 years, major renovations in the plant and infrastructure and systems in these buildings every 20 years. And the fact that the other hotels in this market that financially are struggling has directly impacted the amount of reinvestment into the hotels. And I'm not going to name properties, but as we went through the process of underwriting the renovation of the Hilton, it was difficult. I think that was very, very visible in the community. It took us a couple of years to figure out how to do what we did, and we spent 40 million renovating 554 rooms at that hotel, knowing that we were here to support the opening of this building. But we didn't quite get there. And so we really need the other market participants and all of us to get back to a more normal level of occupancy where the financial economics are there to support renovations and reinvestment.
We saw in Wauwatosa, I think, is the effect of the pandemic and Zoom. When I used to practice law in Boston, I used to fly all over. Sure, now, if I were still doing that, I'd be doing it, a lot of it by Zoom. And even courts allow arguments by Zoom and all that now, where they didn't used to. So our belief is that Zoom has killed our midweek. Is that what you're saying?
I would say, I mean, you're right. The business travel market is not what it was and probably never will be. Depending on the market, I'd say it's running about 20%. Yeah, the road warrior guy who's never done a video conference call in his life has now learned that he can and save his company money. But you know, we see markets where business travel is still strong. So it's very much case by case, and it's still significant. Good news is that leisure travel has grown. I mean, leisure came out of COVID stronger than ever. A lot of disposable income at the wealthier end of the economy. So to some degree, a leisure business has offset that.
And international travel is dropping. Las Vegas is down 4% currently. But not for the fact that people loving their country and traveling around it, the country would be losing a tremendous amount of revenue.
For political reasons.
I wasn't going to go there.
Right. Committee members, any other? Mr. Arnold?
So it had come up during the visit presentation, and I sit on the visit board also, that it might be easier as opposed to building a new facility to have the existing facilities expanded, namely the Hyatt and the Hilton. What's the receptivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think to support the convention center, that is likely the easier path. I don't think that changes the issue that the demand dynamics need to improve. There's a demand issue here, and we need to financial health, but that is the strategic goal. We're open to having that conversation. I think that is probably very different than adding a new 650-room hotel to the market. And I'd also reiterate that there's 400 rooms that are coming online with projects that we've all read about that are going to be hitting the inventory in the market in the next couple of years. So I think we need to see how the market absorbs that added inventory and what additional new business that this renovated center has in its book of future business that will come into the market and how that improves.
But that gets back to the mayor's comment. Again, this was part of his presentation that for some of these, well, the RNC being a big example, having to do multiple contracts with multiple hotels, and that's a turnoff to some of the potential business that we could have that would be larger scale business.
Is one of many, many reasons.
You can't build a whole. You
Why
can't build
convention
hotels
planners
based on one
Right.
system.
And it's not unique to Milwaukee either. So not denying that point, but we think that probably
They have corporate sales. They sell as one. They're not selling just this Hilton. So
I would add one minor thing to the idea, which is that it's not about prospecting new people to come here to add to the marketplace. That's more about like what Indianapolis did, even though they do have their football stadium downtown. It's more like what Indianapolis did when they built a 1,000-room hotel. A 1,000-room hotel is a signpost. And that says to people who are bringing certain amount of people in their conference that are coming in, that they could stay at that hotel. So that doesn't necessarily bring more people in, other than the fact that it might attract conventions that wouldn't normally come here, were it not for the fact that we had a 1,000-room hotel. And at a third of the price, I don't think you could buy it on eBay for less than what you're talking about building a 650-room hotel.
I mean, the other problem is the number of events that require that amount of inventory in the market at a single night. How many nights a year can we actually support that? We talked about the 20 to 25 nights a year that this market is close to being sold out. But the other 300 nights a year, we have a lot of unused capacity. And so adding additional capacity to support an incremental 5 to 10 events a year, only to dump all of that capacity into the market the other 340 nights a year, is really challenging. You can't have these rooms sit empty bulk of the time.
And the risk is you add a shiny new 650. You dilute the rates in the market, you dilute the profitability of the other hotels. Those hotels are not able to set aside enough money to renovate their product, and the other hotels will deteriorate without proper renovation.
You mentioned a couple of times 400 new rooms. Explain 400 new rooms when talking about week to week.
Why they're not built, they can't get financed. The lenders are aware of these same numbers.
They are getting built. Somebody must be forecasting demand. Otherwise, I wouldn't
They're not
spend a
getting-
dollar on a package.
Well,
Yeah.
and where would they be? I mean, I think.
Well, there's
also,
several
you know,
already
we're looking at
I
this.
can tell you where, there's two within 1,000 feet of where we're sitting. Oxy, which is 165 rooms, which is now upgrading its brand, interestingly enough, which is an argument we made at the time. There's another one on the corner of Kilbourne and King Drive, which is another 168 rooms. So that's what 350 right there. So that's two within 1,000 feet, not even 1,000. Less
It's
than,
also easier when one of those hotels gets their land for free. So
right there's a hotel. There's another one on the third ward being proposed for a conversion of an existing building, which is arguably not in the convention 1,800 foot lineal radius, but it's in the downtown segment. And then there's the one at Brady and Farwell. There's four right there, which combine are 500 rooms.
Are these going to get built?
They've all received all their approvals, all their permissions. All they need to do is get somebody to lend them the money.
Well, this is the problem. I mean, we approve a lot of things in Wauwatosa and then they don't get built because.
They haven't gotten built yet, and some have been pending now for 2 years.
if there's one thing in the Hunden study that actually might be right, it's the fact that the last thing the city of Milwaukee needs is more 180 and 200 room hotels.
Well, I've been making that argument for the last 15 years, and it falls on deaf ears.
I've been hearing you about.
I mean, that
I'm
argument
fairly
with
certain
democracy.
these guys.
I said there should be at least 300 rooms. I hear all the arguments about that. But what we seem to have here is maybe a threshold question conflict. I think the Wisconsin Center District's argument, and I'll be the devil's advocate, is that our job here is to maximize Wisconsin Center District financial performance. And to do that, to attract more conventions, we need a larger convention headquarters hotel to avoid the multiplicity of hotel problem that seems to be a deterrent for certain events. Understanding that may hurt the overall hotel industry, but it will maximize financial performance for the Wisconsin Center District, which is interested in attracting conventions, not necessarily because a lot of your hotel business has nothing to do with conventions. It's the leisure travel, as you say, the business traveler, the road warrior, the one-off, somebody coming here for a corporate meeting, some legal matter, taking a deposition, an appearance in court. The Wisconsin Center District is irrelevant. That's a big chunk of your business. I'd be curious what percentage of your business is convention related versus all the other possible reasons people could be staying. That would be an interesting point.
Yeah, so what we call group business
Group
time,
Okay,
about 35% of our business.
okay. So people on the Wisconsin Center District Board, including its top management, might say, sorry, we might hurt the hotel industry, but we're not here to support the hotel industry. We're here to support maximizing convention business in a facility we just spent $458
It's
million.
important to know
Now,
that
I don't necessarily
I
agree
don't
with
know
that.
if we agree with that.
I don't
Singular
agree with
mission.
that either, especially when the industry is paying the bill.
it's
Essentially
not
paying the
well
taxes
thought
to
out.
support the Wisconsin.
It's not well thought out. If you're not including in the process, the fact that we have a difficult time getting people to come to Milwaukee because we have, look, face it, we have a minor league airport. This is my adopted city. We have a minor league airport. We don't have 35 direct flights. We're, of those airports, we're the only airport that had a negative. All the other airports had record years. We had -7% last year. That's because they raised prices. So, I mean, you don't have an airport that can support putting that size of a hotel here. What you have is you have a traditional nonprofit situation that says that I'm at Visit Milwaukee or at Wisconsin Center District, and I can't succeed unless you give me a bigger convention center. I'm at Visit Milwaukee in the Baird Center. Now that I got my bigger convention center, I can't succeed unless you give me a bigger hotel. I'm at Visit Milwaukee or the convention center, and I got my hotel and I got my convention center. And then they say I can't succeed unless you build me a bigger airport. I mean, if this world was about capitalism and not about nonprofits, we'd have helped. This meeting would be more about the success and failure. Instead of spending the time talking about this, you would all be sitting around your normal board meetings, talking about what the structure of what the conventions they're actually bringing in are and how much they're actually delivering to the city. Really, do we want to ask ourselves how many people are going to the fine restaurants that are owned by the Marcus folks or by Omar or by Adam at Loopy and Iris, who are coming to a volleyball conference? That helps Third Street Market, but you're all in a business right now to put heads in beds, to put people in hotels. And those businesses I'd love to have them come here and talk to us and explain to them what percentage of your convention business actually makes up people who are driving 4 hours in minivans to get here and eat as cheaply as possible and sleep as cheaply as possible and leaving the city. Because we can't support that.
Visit Milwaukee told us that, because we asked this question, what's the benchmark for a healthy market? And they said 70%. Is that a number you
We would
guys
agree with that. We would agree, yeah. And to your,
We got some agree.
to this threshold issue that Goldsman mentioned, so I think this is absolutely key. We don't deny this report has been written with an eye to identifying what might be best for the Wisconsin Center District. We see the Wisconsin Center District, at the end of the day, as a driver of economic development in the city. Like most convention centers, it loses money. I mean, the 2024 statements say it ran at an operating loss of $47 million. Why is that covered? And is it able to continue operating? Because in the same year,
Depreciation. There actually are profits.
Yeah.
Revenue does exceed expenses.
They're profitable because you can move your monies that come in through the thanks of the hard work.
but also that's thanks to $50 million in taxes
That's correct.
that are collected, of which $30 million come from hotels. So
Taxes are
the two
beautiful
things are
thing.
connected. I guess that's what we.
All right. Mr. Crosby,
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the recognition. It's been a very interesting conversation that's going on around the table and very informative as well. Where do I start? I believe, so, I'll go on record, and I think I'm already on record of having taken some exception to the Hunden report with regard to opportunity costs in the first place, because those numbers did get a little fuzzy, especially with regard to convention business lost because of lack of hotel rooms. In the meeting with Hunden, we got two different answers as to what that number actually meant, and they kind of mixed categories. And even when the Visit Milwaukee came in this week, and I'm a member of the Visit Milwaukee board as well, that number continues to get murky because Visit Milwaukee includes other things within their hotel lost opportunity costs, such as the revenue on retail and dining and things of that nature that kind of pumps up that opportunity cost. So I really don't know what that number looks like. my conclusion was that is much less than what we were being led to believe in terms of the opportunity cost, which always led me to believe that as we think about a $500 million project, what are we really chasing after? If we're going to spend $500 million, what's the opportunity there? And the numbers, as folk would say, the math just isn't mathing, if you will. But I would say that, and I'm getting to a question here, that in my mind, this is more of it's capacity versus capability. I think we've answered around the table that we certainly have some hotel room capacity that we're not taking full advantage of. And so I believe really what we're talking here is really about capability, the capability of having a large scale hotel that could be a center for some of these conventions to come in, where it would reduce the number of contracts these conventioneers would have to enter into with these hotels. You would have more one-stop shopping under one roof. You have more modern facilities for meeting spaces and things. So it becomes, to me, a capability issue. Do we have a hotel that fits the modern conventioneers' needed capabilities to host large-scale events? And if we land it there, with regard to, no, Milwaukee doesn't have this 800 room hotel that has all these bells and whistles that modern conventioneers are looking at, then would you, the presenters in the room, would you have an objection if that type of asset enters our market without any public subsidies whatsoever? Because again, I think we continue to go back to that as well. If you really let the competition of the market prevail, if this is privately funded, then I think you would be willing to meet whatever competition decides to enter the market, because they would only enter if the math worked out to them as well. So part one of the question is, are there any objections to bringing on new capabilities in our hotel space without any public subsidies doing that? And then the second part of that, because the conversation continues to kind of be grounded in the what's going on right now, and I believe that all of you all are in business. None of you have business plans for 2026 that says we're going to keep it flat to 2025. You're all projecting some type of growth. And I believe we're all going to continue to do that. And if you're doing that, if not now, in terms of that type of capability in this market, when? So when, would your projections say that we would need this new capability in Milwaukee for this for this type of hotel asset to hit our market? Because I do take exception to some of the comments that were even made about our airport. I really think that for me, who does a lot of traveling, that it's very comforting to land at Mitchell and not be in the hustle and bustle of some of the other airports that I have the opportunity to go to. And in fact, over the last 2 weeks, I've been to Tampa, Phoenix, Denver, Las Vegas, and Charlotte, all direct flights from Mitchell, not connecting one time. And so I think it's highly convenient, the airport that we have here. And I don't see that as a deterrent to bring in conventioneers in. So sorry for the statement / question, but if those presenters could answer that question about the subsidies versus public subsidies versus non-subsidies, and if not now, when, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start on the question. Short answer to your question is no, we would not have an objection to other free market companies. We compete against privately financed hotels every day, including in this market and other places and other cities that we do business. That's a part of our business, and inventory gets added to markets, and we compete on the merits of our assets and our properties. So no, we wouldn't have an objection. I'll start on the second question, and Andrew can jump in on as to the pacing of the recovery and occupancy and when will the demand get to where we think it needs to be, which I think is at the crux of your question. Difficult to tell. It'll depend on how many events get booked into this market. It will, our business historically is highly correlated to GDP, so it will depend on the broader economy. And I'd love to tell you I've got a great forecast for RevPAR for fourth quarter this year, but the truth is that our visibility into what that demand is going to be is relatively short. So it's more of a macroeconomic question, I think. But Andrew,
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The reality is this market has leveled off at 62% for the last 2 years. 62% in 2024, it's 62% in 2020. If we agree that we need to get much closer to 70%, I don't think sat here today we can identify any guarantee of future, and one could say that with confidence. 71, 72.
Oh, really?
That's why, because in 19, my guys came up with a scheme for a convention hotel. And it was financing. Yeah. And you guys were going to do the same, financing.
Yeah, different, very different market conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just so far away from financeable and anything we do. You guys know this, you guys don't. I call up the mortgage brokers around the country and say, well, if you can move your hotel to Florida, we'll get it done. There is nothing going on.
I asked every developer who's come in with these 160 room hotels. I asked them that question. I didn't know the Moxie people that well, because we were kind of at arm's length, shall we say. But the Klein brothers at the corner of Kilbourne and King Drive, I know them very well. I said, why are you messing with 168 room? Why aren't you building 300? Finance it. Why can't you finance it? So that's the answer that they're getting from the capital markets that are central to finance the project on a free enterprise basis.
If you think about it, the Hyatt people, they were really doing well. Told they're not doing so great. They've got a parking lot next to it. They could have put 200 rooms up in a second. There you have your second convention hotel. Do it because don't give you the other one.
You designed the first edition for a second edition parallel to it, so you have an H-shaped, right?
That's correct.
That's still theoretically. So yeah.
Mr. Crosby, did you have any follow-up?
No, I didn't. I appreciate those responses, but thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for
I
them?
guess more question, which is, why do they think there's demand for 168 rooms? Other properties are.
Because they're not relying on convention business as much as the other leisure, the 70% of their business that's not convention or group related.
We're really talking about two different.
Being the new thing in town and then also being a brand that might not be overwhelmingly impactful in this market. To add one more of a certain brand that you don't necessarily get national brand support.
That's why the Moxie's changing their brand. They told me is they needed to upscale in order to capture the leisure trade versus folks going to Live Nation, which is what their original business plan was.
Right.
I would just
We had this discussion extensively.
I would just be incredibly thankful to the Bucks who came to town and got $275 million, explained to the entire city and the county that they were going to be putting heads and beds and people in restaurants. The very first thing they did was build restaurants, and the second thing they did was build hotels. Oops. And and oftentimes we're, as a marketplace, where we have Sophie's choice of what we accept to be able to get things done. I know I probably won't end up being the most loved person for the Bucks by saying that, but that's reality. What impacted the money that a local company like Marcus, and Greg loves the St. Kate so much, it was his own brainchild. He practically has stretch marks from giving birth to the St. Kate, right? Is all of a sudden they built a hotel to compete directly with it right next to the place where all the basketball players used to stay, which is the St. Kate. Now the majority of them stay next door. I mean, we can't help punching ourselves in the face succeed. And the reality is oftentimes it's about greed. And in Milwaukee, you can't necessarily afford to be greedy because we're an incredibly unhealthy city that doesn't have the support of the entire community to help it grow. And we're carrying the burden of a large debt of poverty in the city around with us. So can't afford to do those kind of things.
Okay, so. All right, Mr. Witt.
In my industry, we always seem to be able to come. It's like going to a rodeo where the professional people go first and they call the rodeo clown in to sweep up afterwards.
You said it.
I'm totally good. It's made me a lot of money, so I'm really good with that. And if I mind ask, I'm going to ask Mr. Flaherty to be my Vanna White in this perception. So, Vanna, hold up letter number 1.
You need a sparkly dress though.
Oh, that's sparkling. So, really briefly, so I don't stress the surgery that I'll cause Mark to have for holding this up. Look, Milwaukee's my adopted city. I moved here in 2002. Oddly enough, on my very first drive into the city, when I went to go talk to Michael Cudahy about taking over the Pabst Theater, I drove past the Milwaukee Theater getting built, and I was like, why am I coming to Milwaukee from Chicago when they're building this new theater? Lo and behold, how was I to know that for 20 years the WC would just waste their time at the Milwaukee Theater, do nothing with it, lose money, and kind of burn the image and the branding of it. So I want to start my presentation by saying that I've heard from a lot of people over and over. It doesn't matter who I talk to, friends, non-friends, people on the board, whatever, who tell me constantly that he didn't say anything about taking down the High Life Theater. I had to pay attention to Marty saying it over and over again on TMJ after he was on TMJ. And look, if nobody said anything about taking down the High Life Theater, I would not be facing headline after headline after headline across not just the city, but also in my industry and Billboard, Polestar, Rolling Stone magazine, etc. The entire industry basically saying that we were dead, which also, by the way, impacted us financially incredibly for 2026 and 2027, because now we have to compete with, yes, Live Nation nationally on booking tours, and they've sold everybody because they were the first ones to call agents in New York, LA, Austin, Nashville, and let them know that of our demise. So I first wanted to show this slide, man, these are headlines that basically I'll talk about, what was happening in Milwaukee after these things happened. So I want to approach this in three parts. And it's going to be really quick because I know you guys have things to do today, and you can take that. Thank you. A technical procedural rebuttal is what I would consider this. A rigorous and highest best use evaluation requires accurate benchmarking, complete data, and most importantly, objective independence. Pundit strategy, strategic partners evaluations falls and fails on 3 of those distinct fronts. It relies on demonstrably false equivalency between incompatible venue types, specifically conflating a fixed seat theater with standing room general admission club. Relies on data omission, ignoring essential operational data regarding the Miller High Life Theater's past and current performance and its unique role in the Milwaukee touring market. And it's also impacted by procedural predetermination. Most concerning, the study's objectivity is compromised by its origin. Marty Brooks informed the Pabst Theater Group of the study's eventual results before even the people on the board were aware that you were going to be doing the study.
Could you elaborate on
Can we wait?
I can elaborate on that.
Can we just wait until you're over?
I can elaborate on that I have to do it in your inside of your sheet. I forgot to bring that one with. We can go through this, but on inside of I think it's like page 4, you'll see an email from Marty dated May 15th, 2025 at 2:44 p.m. Marty Brooks emailed myself and my partner Matt Berenger and said, Gary, let me know if you have 5 minutes today for a call. I want to give you a heads up on something I'm sharing with the board tomorrow. No, I'm not leaving. What happened after that was that Marty met with my partner Matt and I. He discussed with us his plans of putting a hotel in place of where Panther Arena was. He discussed the fact that he had the debt ability after building the Baird Center. He had the ability to build and take on the debt to be able to build this hotel. And he warned me before you guys even heard the story about it. He warned me not to be concerned if I ever heard that High Life was impacted whatsoever. And he told us that essentially, because Panther was not profitable, because the groups that were in there didn't pay current rack rate because there was so much renovation that needed to be done, he was going to take it down and put a hotel there. And even if he didn't put a hotel there, he was going to take it down because the city has determined that the Deer District is the new center of the city and he wanted to build a throughway to get there. So to amplify that even more, for anyone who went to the study groups that we all attended with the giant U-shaped table, that giant U-shaped table at the very head of it had a 20-foot screen on the front of it. Maybe I sat next to Jim at that meeting. And that 20-foot screen had a giant photo of Panther Arena replaced by a hotel. There wasn't even a study done yet, right? So what you're talking about is I could probably save my breath on the remainder of what it is that I have to tell you, because I would tell you that the study is invalidated based on the fact that you have someone running your organization, made determinations of what it is that he wanted to do. He went to Hunden, and Hunden rubber stamped what Marty's goals were and what he wanted to accomplish. And maybe that's the reason why we will get into some of these discussions, because it's proven that the study for $147,000 was remedial and lazy in its follow-up on facts. Number one, I think we got pictures here, Mark. All right, number one. Ladies and gentlemen. Easier. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I watch a lot of them. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, just in case you don't know, I might want to send, maybe I'll mail this to the Honda guys in Chicago, because this is what Landmark Credit Union looks like. FYI, they have no seats. Soldier Boy, Black Veil Brides, Trippie Redd. These are the kind of performances that take place in a general admission theater that has no seats. Anna, will you replace them in there? Yeah, on the front, there you go. Oh, wait a minute, you should be familiar with this theater. That's the Miller High Life Theater. Beautifully maintained, in incredible shape, has never been in better shape than it ever has been. Has never been holding more performance than ever. Hey, look, it has seats. So my point here is that Steve Martin, Martin Short, Bluey, Sesame Street, Cirque du Soleil, David Byrne, Jerry Seinfeld. Come on, guys. How old are you all? You're not going to stand for 3 hours in the Landmark Credit Union. The brand, look, that's a brand new, beautiful venue, which, it's important that I've worked my life, my whole career in the city of Milwaukee in the entertainment business to be able to think that people would care enough to want to build other venues here, to actually think that Milwaukee was a great enough city to come to. All right, well, it's happened. But they built a flat floor, non-seated theater. So my point, in fact, one is just that, look, if you can't tell the difference between a seated theater and a standing GA venue theater, were they even paying attention here, or were they just rubber stamping Marty's ideas? So secondly, you can look it down. Secondly, inside of your, oh no, maybe you need to hold this up. It's a good one. I like this. There you go. I love cartoons. I love stickmen. My wife's an artist, and I can really only draw stickmen. The question of how many days High Life hosted events, and the reason I'm bringing these things up is because Hunden used these reasons as to why High Life was no longer needed in the city. The folks at Hunden suggested that High Life was only used 37 times last year, I think is what their mention was. And even the casual observer would understand that they had access to the contracts that we have with WCD. When we negotiated our deal with the Wisconsin Center District, we negotiated a deal that allowed the Wisconsin Center District to retain ownership of all the dates in the High Life Theater that pertain to conventions and conferences and civic-oriented events. Like if Marquette has a graduation, we give up the date to let it happen there. So what happens here is that Hunden, once again, either was incredibly lazy or inept, or they simply allowed Marty to put his thumb on the scale, because what happened is that we actually hosted 104 events at High Life last year. If you want to do a small comparison, I'm sure Alderman Bauman knows this. When Landmark Credit Union Live and Joel Plant walked around the city and told you we're bringing a new venue, he told you they're going to produce 60 events at the new venue. And actually, High Life is on par to exceed on its own currently the number of events that they'll have at High Life just on music events. But we hosted 43 comedy, concert, and family shows there. And the WCD, looking very rocking there with that mullet kind of hairdo, hosted 61 conference events there. That math does math, sir. That math does 104. And the data is real. You know, it just disqualifies the reality of what Hunden claimed as to why I like didn't deserve to be there any longer and why we should put a hotel there. Number three, a legacy of operational neglect versus professional reclamation. The fiction that Hunden states is that historical underperformance proves the venue is a failed asset and the market is saturated. I'm gonna go back to my original story, ladies and gentlemen, about coming to Milwaukee in July of 2002, only to see the construction hats and the fences around the Milwaukee Theater and the Milwaukee Theater being built. After we got our footing, we took over the Pabst Theater and we took over the Riverside in 2005. And then we took over Turner Hall in 2007. By the way, the Riverside was closed when we took it over. By the way, Turner Hall was closed the ballroom was closed for 40 years when we took it over. Once we began to build and develop a music community, I began to speak up about the Milwaukee Theater because I was watching Frank Gimbel kind of lollygag around this theater and not actually accomplish the goals of what they wanted to accomplish. This city missed getting an REM show, which is a really big band for those who are missing the point here that isn't around any longer, simply because Mr. Gimbel wouldn't give up his free comp tickets to the show and the band wouldn't play in Milwaukee because he wouldn't give up his free tickets. The theater was absolutely mismanaged for 22 plus years. I tried my best to say it in places like the Business Journal, because why? For the same reason that we gave up our calendar dates in High Life Theater, we don't just care about ourselves because I live in Milwaukee, I work in Milwaukee. We have to care about the success of the city around us because we're not a successful city. As much as the mayor would like to claim it, we ain't succeeding, not this mayor. We're not succeeding. We have a lot of problems. So we have to work extremely hard together as groups, which is one of the reasons why I'm so proud of being on the table today with these guys, because these guys have invested their blood, sweat, and tears in making the city grow and become better. So while the High Life Theater sat underutilized for 20 years, the Pabst Theater was building a thriving entertainment ecosystem, growing from one venue to 6 and helping to define Milwaukee's cultural identity. Why did the High Life Theater fail to keep pace? The answer isn't the building. It was operational neglect. Previous WCD management strategy failed the venue, but a building is not its past mistakes. Based on our current momentum and the high caliber bookings that we're now attracting, the theater's revitalization isn't a future hope. It's happening right now. Look, I think there was never a more important moment in the WCD's history than when they hired Marty Brooks. Marty Brooks and I've been here 24 years. I watched the city hire people who were unqualified. A guy that ran the Marcus Center for X amount of years who never had any experience running a theater. The guy that used to be the head of Visit Milwaukee that never had any experience running Visit. Sorry to be the guy that says these things, but I was proud when a guy who came from St. Louis and New York, who had experience running convention centers, came here to do it. So I think it was a major turning point for the city of Milwaukee. And also, honestly, for the support that you and members of the board gave to Marty to be able to get the Baird Center done. It was critical that we got that done for the city, and I applaud you guys for it. Lastly, the rubber stamp timeline. You've heard my conversation about that. You know where I'm at. You know that Marty reached out to us. You have the email. By the way, I'm going to say it publicly for all the people in the crowd to respond to me. If I'm lying, I'm telling Marty Brooks to sue me today. He's got a lawyer. I know that already. I'm having Marty sue me today because I'm putting it on public record that Marty sent me this email, that Marty had the conversation with me, and that you're all sitting here wasting your time over a study that not only fails my industry, but fails theirs and fails the city. If you want to push through a massive real estate play without getting checked, you buy a $147,000 security blanket that's called a strategic study. But here's the thing. Independent studies usually have their conclusions narrated by the CEO to others 24 hours before the board even knows that the study exists. When Marty Brooks called us at 2:44 p.m. on May 15th to lay out his vision for a convention hotel on the Panther Arena site, citing the WCD's unique ability to stomach the debt, he isn't speculating, he was script writing. This completely undermines the entire study. Lastly, I gotta go to my last page, sorry. Let's see, Daily Double, no, it wasn't the Daily Double, hold on. Lastly, one, like, I know you guys have taken a lot of heat over this. I'm so proud of you guys because I know that nobody wants to take on these roles. I'm thankful for you all, just like I'm thankful for my attorney generals right now. We're fighting in the courts of the Wisconsin and the rest of the country over the Live Nation deal. Thankful for you guys because I know they're highly compensated jobs that a lot of people chase down, but don't tell the tax guys that. But look, it's deeply concerning that I have to address this commission regarding the fundamental errors with the WCD commission study, a project that cost ultimately, no matter where it came from, Milwaukee taxpayers, $147,000. These inaccuracies are not mere oversights. They're structural flaws that were used to justify the demolition of a historical landmark. In a city facing significant economic challenges, we cannot afford to base decisions involving hundreds of millions of dollars on having someone's thumb on the scale. We must question the leadership that vetted this study, and we must hold Hunden Partners accountable for such a substandard product. This isn't just about a building, it's about an economic engine. Demolishing Wisconsin's only 4,000-seat theater based on a technical fallacy would be a catastrophic failure of cultural stewardship. Regional loss would be immense. High Life serves a distinct demographic, families and established professionals aged 35 and above. That perfectly complements other local venues like Landmark Credit Union, which attracts audiences 21 to 30. We risk losing world-class performers like Steve Martin, Martin Short, Jerry Seinfeld, and Ringo Starr, as well as family staples like Louis and Sesame Street. Beyond the stage, more importantly, we lose the high-income earners who dine in our restaurants and stay in our hotels. We lose the global branding that these artists bring to our city. And with 39% of the buyers who travel 90 miles plus to experience the city in our venues. A highest and best use study must be a rigorous search for objective truth, not a rubber stamp for a preordained agenda. Because this evaluation relies on demonstrably flawed data and was commissioned to validate Marty Brooks' existing bias, it lacks the technical and ethical standing required for commission approval. Pabst Theater Group urges the commission to reject the recommendation to replace High Life Theater with a hotel and to formally dismiss the validity of this entire study due to the compromised process that produced it.
Just for the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you remember more of that.
Mr. Randall.
You described distinguished from.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You distinguished how the auditorium theater is distinguished from the landmark facility.
Yeah.
And then we heard about the need to have more traffic come in that takes advantage of hotels during the week. And so are the shows that booked at the auditorium, and I'm guessing because of the demographic, these are the kinds of shows that would also come from outside of the general radius 4 or 5 hour drive, unless it's Chicago.
Yeah, it's
And
generally a
then coming out
90,
for cheaper tickets.
yeah, 39% of our buyers come from 90 miles away or further. Generally, that 90-mile radius is pretty tight as to what it is. We also get an incredibly strong, I mean, Milwaukee is a beautiful, Chicago is a beautiful uncle for us to have. So yes.
And that's leading them, assuming, to more hotel bookings. for some of those shows? Are they occurring on weekends or are they occurring during the week? Is that a possibility that more of those types of shows could be booked during the week that would satisfy the need to book more hotel rooms?
See, the unique thing about our industry is that I would complain all day long as I book shows along with my partner that we want to get shows on weekends because everybody wants to do a show on a Friday or a Saturday. But the reality is that those shows most likely fall into Minneapolis, Detroit, or Chicago to get the Friday and Saturdays. The higher percentage of our shows end up during the week. The shows that we get that are Fridays and Saturdays are mostly family shows. When we do Sesame Street or we do Cirque du Soleil or we do Bluey or things like that, those shows generally tend to land on Thursday, Fridays, or Saturdays. But the majority of our business is really, we were very fortunate this year that we got Steve Martin Short before Martin Short's tragic daughter's death is that we were very fortunate. That was the first time we ever gotten on a Saturday. Last time was on a Monday. So we take the shows when we can get them because we've always, like every morning when I wake up, no offense to anybody who's born in Milwaukee, but every morning when I wake up, I remind myself I live in Milwaukee. And everyone who runs a business in Milwaukee knows that it's harder to run a business here because we're not Chicago. The reason people come from Chicago to Milwaukee is because we don't have the density. The reason that we'd love to have the density. The reason that you mentioned loving the airport, sir, was that it wasn't that crowded. I'd love our airport to be more crowded, to be honest, because that would mean it was successful. I love landing there instead of O'Hare too, because I don't like to fight my way all through. But so I think that I think that our industry is quite honestly, because of the change in entertainment relative to the things that happen now besides just music, there's podcasts. There are authors that come to the city. Comedy is 31% of our business is comedy now. So many more people travel to come to see those events and those shows now. The 3 nights of widespread panic that we do annually at the Riverside Theater attracts people from 49 different states to come to the city of Milwaukee. They partner and they stay in hotels while they're here. Can't help what they look like after they leave, but they definitely come here. So our business has become an ad hoc version of a modern day convention and visitors bureau because people now travel rather than the local community only supporting it.
Is it fair to say that your concern is more focused on the site selection as opposed for the general proposition subsidized hotel not be built anywhere, which is basically the market's position to summarize in a nutshell? In other words, you could conceivably support a publicly funded convention hotel on another site such as Belfield Plaza.
I'm 66 years old. I'm incapable of only thinking about my own business at this point in my life.
Fair enough, but I said principle.
Yeah. My principle is that in the same way that I care deeply about poverty in our public schools, which don't matter at all, in theory, to whether I sell tickets to Steve Martin and Martin Short, as a business owner in the city of Milwaukee, one has to be concerned with what makes Milwaukee better. Even if you're just a capitalist, you have to focus on, if I could make more people be more successful in their lives and be able to have jobs and work, that means they'll come and spend money on theater tickets or hotel tickets. So my concern isn't whether it's subsidized or not. First and foremost, I want what's best for the city. Look, City of Milwaukee supported building Landmark Credit Union Live, and I'm in support of it now. And I work closely with the Live Nation FPC folks, and I want to see them succeed because I want to see Milwaukee succeed. I want to see Milwaukee do the things because I have a voice, because of our success over these years. I want to see Milwaukee do the things that are best for the city, not simply best for the individual business or the individuals that are involved. I need the hotels to be successful. By the way, a good example of this is that part of our success never came about in the live entertainment business until in our market, until we were able to nurture and grow a nighttime hospitality industry in the city of Milwaukee, until we were able to nurture and grow neighborhoods that were populated by distinct areas where we could go to Bronzeville or we could go to Bayview or we could go to River West, and people are attracted to participate in all kinds of parts of the city. That's what's ultimately allowed people from the northwest suburbs of Chicago or Chicago to come to Milwaukee, is they now can come to the city and find great restaurants, which we didn't used to have. We had a few, but now we have them everywhere. We didn't used to be able to define that we could go to different parts of the city and experience. Milwaukee was all one blob to me. Now it's a separate map of experiences and destinations they can all peruse. And unfortunately for us, but fortunately for them, it also lacks density, so they could love to come here and utilize.
But you all seem to be united on the proposition that this study, for various reasons, not the least of which is some factual inaccuracies, is a flawed study. Fair to say?
We agree. We agree that there are things that are missing from this study that should have been part of a comprehensive analysis. There are things that there are elements of the analysis that we believe are flawed.
Okay, any other questions?
Maybe one follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
And that is just, for the sake of clarity, argument about the airport was that the airport is not an issue, not whether or not it's crowded, not crowded. But my point was our airport is not the issue because, sure, we could get more traffic through there, but we don't have an airport issue in Milwaukee. But secondly, I wanted to find out whether or not, because I think some very salacious allegations have been made in the last presentation, and I want to see whether or not this is corroborated by the gentleman from our first two presenters. Were you aware of any attempt by our CEO, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Center District to perpetrate a fraud upon the Center District by facilitating a report that was orchestrated to further a personal interest as opposed to genuinely or even I guess generally trying to get to an answer to how to best utilize assets of the Baird Center, because that's a pretty big allegation.
No, we're not aware of no understanding or knowledge of what Mr. Witt meant.
You speaking for both, or I only heard one person answer?
No, no.
Happy to answer. Down for answering.
Were you also asking Mr. Flaherty? Mr. Crosby?
You were, I agree with what these guys said. I think there was probably a rush to get something done, accomplished. 100%.
I didn't hear the last part of that. So Mark, you're saying you were aware of that as well?
No, I'm not aware of anything. I'm just saying I'm not aware of it. I was not involved.
Fraud is a pretty loaded word.
Yeah, I think we're gonna.
Misleading.
Honestly, I think maybe.
So through my lawyer ears, I heard that someone authorized a report to justify a conclusion that already been made, so it can be rubber stamped by the board. And in my mind, that's perpetrating a fraud. So we can call it whatever we want to call it, but that's what was described. That's what was just described around the table.
As a lawyer, I'd like to be precise with words that can result in legal liability. So I would say what we've been discussing is the possibility of a preordained conclusion, which doesn't necessarily reach the level.
I agree completely. I agree. That was my sense from the get-go.
I'm not saying
I said that publicly. I mean, this
I'm
was
not
all.
saying that I agree with any of it. I'm just saying we can use the term preordained conclusion rather than going to the fraud.
All right, well, I think we all know that our job is to evaluate the study and, come to some conclusions and present those in front of our full board. So that's that. Mr. Grady or Mr. Crosby, did you have any follow-up?
No, I appreciate the responses around the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more point. Correct me if I'm wrong. The board never voted on commissioning this study. It was just undertaken by the CEO. Signed a contract, recruited the firm, committed to $145,000 without any board action.
Okay. Well.
Well, as a follow-up to that, the CEO had capacity to make that decision.
That is correct. CEO had the capacity.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for here to meet with us. We have the future committee meeting dates and discussion items are in your packet. And with that, I will.
Can I just add,
Yes.
thank you to our chairperson for her hard work.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you so much, Mr. Randall. Can I get a second? Thank you, Mayor McBride. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, Mr. Crosby.
We should have lunch.